So good morning, everyone. We are live now. So my name is Harshil Ranjani, and I'm a core committee member in IIT, VIT. I'm pleased to see the enthusiasm of the audience and would like to welcome you all to the workshop of PROPEL into WebApps, Building PWA. We're glad to introduce our speaker for today's workshop, Mr. Tuhin Karmakar. He completed his formal education at Meghnad Shah Institute of Technology and currently works as a front-end engineer at Amazon. He creates performance scalable and reliable real-time systems with desirable, accessible, and valuable user experience. So we are grateful to have you today. The platform is all yours.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Herschel, for the quick intro, though. And hello, folks. How's it going? Yeah. So, quick background of me, like already he mentioned. Just to add on to that, like I am just a graduate at 2020. I'm a CS grad. After that, I went into Flipkart. Sometimes spent some time at Google. Went back to Amazon. Still figuring out stuffs in my life. But yeah, glad to be here, over here, and around. And yeah, let's get started. So, okay, throughout this entire thing, please feel free to interrupt me wherever you want to, and yeah, I'm pretty sure Harshal has got my back. So he would be there to like just ping me up, or whenever you folks have a question, feel free to interrupt me anywhere. And I am more than happy to stop, talk to you, get all the stuff up and running, make sure that we're on our same page, and then we move on. Cool. With this note, today we plan is to like to talk about some sort of a progressive web application. So I thought, okay, let's break this part into like a two parts. One is we would have a PPT format. Maybe I can just show you a bunch of boring slide. I mean, I hope I will not make it as boring as it looks sounds like. And yeah, and probably I am also open for and taking up any live questions, if any. With that note, let's get started. Give me a second to share my screen. Then there you go. Alrighty. Confirmation, is my screen visible? Great. Okay, just give me one more second. I'm not sure what went wrong, but yeah, probably some sort of a network glitches. Okay, let me try to present it. Okay, great. So let's quickly talk about this particular feature of websites with superpower, right? So now, at this current point, right, there are multiple things that the websites can do, and of course, like they do have a lot of options. To be honest, to go for having a lot of superpowers. Now, what are those superpowers? What's PWA? We'll quickly go about it, and what's the difference between websites, web apps, and how all these things tied into together. Let's quickly jump into one after the another. So let's say there was a time where people might have a lot of questions like, hey, does it actually meets the customer needs? Does it really grow our business? It is feasible, it is robust? Because as of now, right, we all know that websites are sometimes unreliable. That totally depends whether the, let's say, whether the entire end-to-end journey is going smooth or not. Maybe there are times where we also see that things are not going smooth. Maybe there are network hiccups, maybe there are offline issues, experiences. Sometimes it takes a longer amount of time to load and then the process, right? And then at the same time, you create a website, then people are all saying, hey, why not go React Native? Let's build a normal basic application over Play Store. Why bother pay for hosting monies and buy a domain and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of questions. However, even in that amount of time, the interesting bits is sometimes we see that, hey, the web would have a good linkability, which means that, hey, I give you a google.com and you would just go ahead and be able to instantly access it, right? So that's what linkability is. The world is super accessible. All you don't need to download a website, you don't need to download some sort of application. You just have to like click a link. It's instantly shareable. It's easy to deploy. The web is very easy to update. Anybody can push anything, and there are millions and billions of websites that are being published at this particular segment over and over and over again in this very short amount of time. However, then there is this native app world where it is like, hey, even though I do not have an internet connection, I can still access it, right? And not just that, there's a conception that, hey, native apps are high performant, there are smoother device integration, it has an icon, some sort of this, it is rich, reliable, it just works. And that brings to the point is like, I wish I could have both of the same world at the same point by creating something which is technically a website, but also an app which is fast, installable, reliable, and engaging. If all of these criteria are there, that's become a PW. All right. Now there is a very common question: is like, hey God, okay, hey Twin, you have just throw up a lot of bunch of text around me and like, hey, how does it work? So there are multiple things that happens. There are predictive prefetching, there are offline browsing experience, there are web post notification, there is an installation prompt, then there is a resource caching. In a much more generic answer to that thing would be, it's like saying this thing, hey, the website kind of figures out what are the resources like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, what resources, and the images maybe, and the third party dependencies, what resources are necessary, what resources are not quite necessary. It might preload some content, it might already figure out that, hey, if the person is coming to, let's say, Amazon.com, the person is likely to perform some search. Maybe if over time I would also know, right, that, hey, if the person keeps on searching like tech products, I know that, hey, this person is likely to open, let's say, a Samsung's website rather than a washing machine's website. Or in as when I say website, it's essentially some sort of a sub page or a product page, so I can already predictively prefetch the content. Moving forward, in order to bridge the gap between websites and applications, we also need to ensure that our entire product or our entire end-to-end product that we are building has at least something that it can do offline. It has to do something. But once again, you might ask, hey, how can a website work offline? And we can surely talk about it. Can it really work? What are the caveats of it? And what are the pros and cons of it? So that's the point of it. And then the most important thing, right, we sometimes want to show some rich actions like, hey, let's say imagine Swiggy, Zomato, which is probably famous for pretty much like sending hilarious notifications like on Mondays, on Tuesdays, or like you go into any occasion and you just see some sort of a very hilarious text and some sort of a notification. So with all in combined, PWA essentially aims to achieve all of this thing. Now you might say, hey, why bother going to this route at the very first place instead of just building a native application? The answer is pretty simple. That you pretty much have three types of users. One is your engaged user, another one is your semi-engaged user, and the third one is not engaged. I define the engaged user who's install your application, do some transaction, and essentially become your valuable customers. All right. Maybe you have a very interesting startup idea and you just want to launch it out, and you know that, hey, there would still be some portions of a users who would just go ahead and utilize my system and then make purchases, make some payments, and give me some bucks about it, right? But then there are some people who are hesitant, who was like, hey, I would like to try it out before I actually go full in order to download the content and go through that route, right? Those are my semi-engaged users. Now, in semi-engaged users, the user journey that we go through is a bit different, right? I would like to try it out. And if it is a native application, I'm already putting a barrier that, hey, don't install my application. You have to install my application in order to go there, which is probably some sort of a defense mechanism that, hey, I'm not going to install some application. I just don't want to try it. So that's the beauty of it. If the you and at the same time, you also need to remember that it's something that you can technically install to a degree, and we can surely talk about it. So it means that, hey, user gets a preview of what is coming up, and most importantly, what they can expect in the longer run. Quick pause. Any questions so far? Going once, going twice, going thrice. All right, I take it as no. Great, you folks are awesome. Great. Now, let's before I even jump into what PWAs are and how it achieves it, what are the building blocks of it, let's do a quick case study. So this is the value proposition of it. It's like, hey, does it really worth doing it? So here you go. eBay, they essentially improved their page loading time by 100 millisecond, and that improved their 0.5% add to cart count. Now you might say that, hey, Tuhin, it's 0.5% very low. But buddy, you have to remember the user base of eBay is pretty much huge. Once again, it's just an example. Similarly, go for Trivago is like, hey, people were like going offline, and then what they ended up doing, much like Google Chrome also has, right? Whenever you have an offline experience or offline screen, you can play certain amount of a dinosaurs jump in. So it's like I'm still retaining the users. I'm still making sure that they stay on the page until their internet recovers. All right, and that improves retention. Cool. Now that we have discussed about this thing, we also saw this very interesting fact. The moment Starbucks did it, it saw it essentially doubled the entire amount of users that were watching it. Similarly for Uber still has a web application, and this is very interesting because at one point in time I went to Bangalore, and over there I was stuck very badly into traffic, and I was not getting an Uber. My mobile was dead. The only thing that I had was my laptop over there and some sort of a public Wi-Fi. So yeah, that essentially saved my life. It's like, hey, I can still book an Uber even from my laptop. So being that because it's a PWA. Even further, Uber also has something known as Uber Lite, if I'm not mistaken, and that essentially works even on lower bandwidths. So that's where the reliability comes. That my users can now reliably use the entire system that they really want to. Right. So that increases their conversion. Yeah, BLR and traffic, buddy, you are absolutely right. Like I haven't seen some worse situation about it. So yeah, thanks for calling that out. It takes very hilarious amount of time to reach a place. So yeah, thanks to Uber, and over there Uber people are like, I am still not gonna accept your request. Alrighty, coming to that point is like when you are waiting for a car, you can technically now went to Tinder, perhaps search for some people over there, and then what Tinder ended up doing is like, hey, I made it a peer progressive web application, and I reduced my waiting time, and now my entire website runs faster. So you can technically find your match a little bit faster. So on and so forth for Alibaba, Twitter Lite, Forbes, Pinterest. And once again, these are just a fairly low number of just examples. There are other millions and billions of websites that are being migrated to progressive web application, and it's actually getting a ripping a lot of benefits. So once again, these are just some case studies. You can apply it to your systems. You can just build up this stuff already. Great. Now that we have talked about this thing, let's talk about the PWA's recipe of how PWA has been structured and the main three key ingredients to it. All right. Here you start. One. So the first thing that a progressive web application needs is something known as a web app manifest. Is like now you might ask, what is a web app manifest? Long story short, it's a JSON file. Now, okay, if I'm not familiar with JSON, it's you can think it of as a curly braces and key value pairs. So, well, for example, you have like this thing, right? A short name of something, a name of something, description, so on and so forth. These are essentially telling the browser and the engine itself that, hey, this is my website, and this website does X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. These are the icons you can use for something. These are a larger icon. These are smaller icon. This is where the page start. Hey, you want to display it as an independent standalone application. I want the background color to be changed, so on and so forth. We can surely take a deep dive into it, but these are the core parts of it. Once again, for your cheat sheet, all that you have to do is define a web app manifest, like create a JSON file. At the end of the day, just put a name, give it the awesome fancy name that you really want to give to your startup. And maybe if you want to give it a short name, it's up to you, but once again, it's optional. Give a very nice description for search engine optimization, and once you have it, you can put your icons. Say that, hey, my start URL is nothing but index.html, or maybe you can say my start URL is root or slash in your particular domain, and you are pretty much good to go in this particular fashion. Now, there are other features to it, right? This is okay, apologies for this, some sort of a very interesting PPT images, but okay, but deal with it for now. Oh, so this is like some manifest. Some people call it manifest, some people call it web manifest, but at the end of the day, it is just like that. And it what it ends up doing is it ends up like creating all such icons. You can configure your layouts, and just you can see, right, that PWA compat, and then there is that smiley with a hilarious smile, and that kind of splash screen. So you can actually create a splash screen to a website, which is different for a preloader. Now this means that at any point of time, right, if you, or let's say you launch love the PPT. I was expecting somebody would throw tomatoes at me because of this hilarious parts of it. But okay, thanks for bearing with it, man. Yeah, appreciate it. Good. Alrighty. So now let's say that for some reason you open YouTube and the YouTube thing come be like YouTube thingy just comes up like that what's that icon of the YouTube? Hey, what was that icon of the? How do I describe it? Like a red, some square, like rectangular, squarey, rectangular kind of uh, button. Like, what was that? Whatever it is. Anyways, and the play button in between. Yeah, you get the point. Everyone knows the icon of YouTube. All right, cool. So similarly, you can create some hilarious part of it, give some a little bit of an interactivity over there, and just get things up and running quickly over there. All righty. Now, alrighty. Now that you have that part, the next piece is all right. Now I know that my website has some sort of a web manifest. Now what? Like I just add a JSON. Does that solve the problem? The answer is pretty much no, right? You still have to do a little bit more, which is hey, you need to install your PWA directly or indirectly into somewhere else. Now you have to install it and either in the mobile or in the iOS, or you can also install it in a desktop, and depending on which environment you are. Now this is a very interesting part of it. You had a website, you just added a JSON. Now, if you can make it installable, a little bit more installable, that really creates a unique experience. And imagine you are not putting it straight till now, you're still not putting it to Play Store. And as a result, since you are not putting it on Play Store, you are anyway saving a lot of money. Now, if you might ask how? The answer is very simple. Let's say you make a game. Okay? Now, your game has a Google extension categorized as PWAs. Shaksham, can you just elaborate a little bit more on what do you mean on a Google extensions? Because once again, it's a very broad term. So if you can just elaborate, I can get back to you instantly. Alrighty. Meanwhile, now imagine about this thing. Let's say you build a game or HTML game and you put it on Play Store and your game has in-app purchases. All right. Here's the point. If you make 100 rupees purchase over there, so your user makes it, Google takes a 30% cut, at least, if not more. Apple even takes like extra money in order to ensure that your application stays on Play Store, then takes a cut from there. So you are not making 100 rupees if you are actually getting 100 rupees, right? So you are even the user has spent 100 rupees, you are only getting a fraction of it. That's 70 rupees, 60 rupees, which is a bad thing. In this case, since it does not come from Google Play Store and at the same time is still secure enough, you are making the full price. So you're making the entire money that goes into your pocket. And once again, call out to Saksham. Yeah, please, can you please elaborate on Google extensions, and we'll talk about it for sure. Meanwhile, I would move on to the next one. Now, you might say, hey, how can I make an website installable? So there are this very dead simple requirements. Once again, your website needs to be on HTTPS. It needs to be on a secure context. That's the first thing. Second, it has to have, like you remember, I can go back to a few slides and just quickly show you the previous thing. You remember, right? This one, this icon, right? So it needs to have some sort of an icon and a manifest. If it doesn't have, then the browser doesn't know what to install, how to install, what to show. Because imagine an application being installed on your particular home screen, but then you are not able to see anything. It's like a blank icon. And like, how do I even ever able to like identify it? Imagine, like, yeah, imagine the goddamn Tinder icon is not there on the screen. How would you even know you are opening Tinder? That's a mistake. Like, now, for some reason, you might really want to do that, but in PWA content, you should not do that. Alrighty. Coming back to the point, you need a registered service worker. Okay, now that's a very interesting term. We can talk about what a service worker is, but it's like a very smart piece of code that figures out the rest of it. Like, hey, what to show, what not to show, and sits somewhere in between of the server and client. But always, that's a very generic explanation, and we will surely talk about it in the longer term. And definitely, right, we at web, right, we always have to fetch a lot of things, like fetch some JavaScript, fetch some, let's say, CSS, fetch some images, fetch some stuff, so on and so forth. So a kind of a fetch event, so that's an event, right? So you need some sort of an event handler to do this, to provide some sort of offline experience. So let's recap. You need a web app manifest. You need So you need a web app manifest. Next is you need at least one icon. Third, you need a web site to be running on HTTPS. Fourth, you need some sort of a middleman, which is service worker. And most importantly, you need some sort of a fetch event handler in order to ensure that everything ties up together, right? And then you can get stuff up and running over there. Great. Taking a quick pause. Now I see that we have some interesting questions. So Google extensions are also installed on Chrome. So does installing websites on Chrome also make it an extender, or am I missing out something? Very interesting question. So now it's a very different thing. PWAs are kind of like that, but not exactly. I would put it in a different format. Imagine if you're talking about, let's say, can extensions be considered as a standalone web apps, even if we know that they can be run independently without a browser? Very interesting. So it's a trade-off. I can give you two answers. One is a short answer, one is a long answer. Short answer is yes. Long answer is it depends. Elaborate. So here it is. Have any of you heard of Electron by any chance? Or at least Slack in general? Slack, or maybe some people might be like some any Electron app. What are the other Electrons app, buddy? There are a ton. Discord is an Electron app, I think, so on and so forth. So these applications, even though they package as an application, they are not exactly an application, right? Any application that is packaged with Electron as a bundler is nothing but a Chromium browser, or you can think about it as a Chrome browser that is running behind the screen. Not exactly Chrome. Its engine is, of course, but yeah, you get the pattern. I'm oversimplifying a lot of things just to like have it digestible, and we can always go incrementally deeper. Now, the question is, do you consider Slack's desktop application or Discord desktop application as a bundled website or as a application itself? Now, technically, it is not an application. Technically, it is still a bundled website, but it presents itself in such a way, it is able to integrate in such a way, and it is able to give you the experience that you used to have with a native application, that you feel that it's an application and not a bundled application, or not a bundled website. The same goes here. Now think about it the same way. A Chrome extensions are essentially the same pattern, right? You still read HTML, you still read JavaScript, you still read stuff, you still use the same old Chrome APIs in order to integrate and extend the functionality of an existing website. PWS takes it a little bit forward. PWS says, hey, I am not a tool itself. I am a fully featured website itself. All right. An example is somewhat like this. Yeah, very good. Discord present itself as a native application very well. Exactly. So it's a bundling pattern, right? So PWA says that, hey, you don't need me to extend your feature. You can still use me to extend your feature, but I can work independently. I can have my own interface. I can have my own journey. I can have my own installation flow. I can have my own functionalities, and then that would quickly go into the flow over there. All right. So that's a major difference. One fun fact: PWAs can integrate Chrome extensions, because at the end of the day, remember, it's essentially a browser. I won't say it's a Chrome, but it's essentially a website that is being packaged to you in such a way that you don't realize that it's a website, and you just grabs that illusion that, hey, it's not a website. It's like my plain old application that I used to see. Next thing to, by the way, Sakshan, does that answer your question? Okay, just feel free to respond. Meanwhile, Arya has one point. Are the service workers being referred here to the REST API? Very good question. Absolutely phenomenal. Which I really love this question, buddies. So this is a very interesting question that you already asked. The answer is it depends. I'm very sorry to like tell this a very interesting answer. Like I know you're gonna hear me saying this thing multiple times now, that it depends, and it depends, because once again the web, even though I oversimplify it, it's actually way more complicated than it should be. Now, so service workers is not exactly the REST APIs for now, but once again, we will anyways, Arya, we will anyways talk about it the moment we reach over there. Is a third requirement. We'll talk about it. But yeah, just to give you some context, It's not exactly a REST API, but it can actually function as a REST API if you really want it to. It should not be, but you can do that. But should you do that is a very good question, and we can always talk about it. What are the security? Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends on, okay, yeah, so Pulkit, it depends on this factor, right? It depends on a use case. I will talk about it. Just be with me for a few minutes. Let me reach through that service worker part, and then we can surely get this conversation running. And I would probably remember this thing. And Arya, it's a request to you, in any case I forgot to talk about it, just remind me on the chat one more time, and I would surely talk about it, just in case I forget. But I hope I would remember this thing. Great. Now, Abhishek has one final question over here. What are some security considerations for web apps, and how can developers prevent common vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting, SQL injection? Yeah, there are a lot of vulnerabilities, so on and so forth. So, Abhishek, buddy, you're amazing. Your question is absolutely phenomenal. Hold on to that. We'll talk about it after service worker, because that's a very interesting conversation, because that's something that has to go over there. But okay, having said that, I really appreciate, and if you folks know Abhishek by any chance, give him a party, because he just mentioned one very interesting point, which is security is the first layer. It's not something that you add on to a system. Once again, it's something that you has to build from ground up. It cannot be done that, hey, I would build a product and I would put it there, and then I would figure out that, okay, now that I have published this product and this banking API, now I should think about how can I secure this my banking API. That's not how it works. So really appreciate, Abhishek, you raised this question. Hey, Gokul says hello Gokul, hey buddy. Okay, Devon says, what roles does a PWA project include? What roles? I'm not sure if I understood your question correctly. What do you mean by roles? If you can elaborate, once again, we can talk about it. So, just taking a quick pause, folks. Any questions so far? And once again, we already discussed that we would talk about the security part and the how service worker behaves and what are the nuances of it and the nitty gritty details about it in the subsequent format. I would take probably 30 seconds pause just to hear back, just in case if you have more questions, or we are good to move on. Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. You folks are an amazing audience. Great. Alrighty. Let's move on to the next part of it. Great. Okay. Okay. What's next? Great. There you go. So this is something that I wanted to bring about it. So you remember, this is all I'm pivoting back again and again to the web app manifest. Why it is so powerful. You remember that I showed you very previously that you can build that hilarious laughing smiley icon and all those things. You can also put a key value pair over there, and you can call it an screenshots. You can put screenshot, and now you just look at the right side of that particular image. Your installation prompt would precisely look like this. Now, imagine you went to a website, you're opening on mobile, you click on a button, you get this native example, you have some sort of icon, you have the banner, you have the install prompt, you have some scrolling feeds over there. Does it feel familiar towards you now? Does it feel a lot more familiar, just like quote unquote your, how would I say it, just like quote unquote your like native installation, like Google Play Store installation, because you essentially see this only, right? Does it feel a lot more familiar? So once again, the progressive web applications P stands for the progressive enhancement. Your goal is to ensure that you, once again, remember the example of Discord. Your goal is to package everything in such a way so that it does not look like that it is rather, or it is some sort of a website, but rather it can present itself as a indistinguishable application itself with a very generic flow. All right. So it's a very cool thing to do. There are caveats, but we can talk about it. Great. I really appreciate all of you typing in the chat. And yeah, really appreciate Arnan, Rishabh, Swastik, Kritin. And pardon, folks, if I am pronouncing your name bad, because once again, I don't want to pronounce your name bad, but yeah, already. But bear with me. So the product looks presentable than others. Very interesting point. The goal at the end of the day is, see, is somewhat like this. Let's say you went to a shop to buy some gifts. Now that we recently had Valentine's Day and technically we are heading towards breakup and slap day, I hope that does not happen to any of us. But okay, now moving forward, let's say you go to a shop and buy some gifts for the Valentine's Day, or maybe next year's Valentine's Day, or whatever it is, or maybe you just want to pamper yourself. Are you gonna buy something that looks or comes at a good package and has a good product, or are you gonna buy something that is a good product but the packaging is very bad? Ew, that's a very bad experience, right? You don't want to take, let's say, some sort of a package which is wrapped in some gobar. You don't want to take it right in a cow dung where it is just dumped over there. So you want to ensure that the experience and the packaging and the product itself and the features of it, every single thing has to click. Every single thing has to click with the user. And the most important thing is, the more familiarized UI, the interface and the product and the journey and the features you create, the likely your users are to stick. Because once again, imagine we at this point of time, we at a very interesting stage, right? Where we don't want to really change ourselves a lot. Like once you get used to Swiggy, do you really want to go and order the stuff on yourself? The answer is it depends. It depends. It's a behavioral shift. Once the behavioral shift is there, now I cannot say that, hey, this is my plain old boring part, and hey, you just have to relearn it. That's a very bad experience, right? You have to like continuously evolve, and that's the progressive part of it, right? It's always progressive. You cannot just have it at one shot. It's just growing and growing and growing. You have something today, it might change tomorrow, which might again become a little bit more different the next day, and everything kind of keeps changing. So it's a very 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 interesting part toward it. All right, now, coming back, the first look of a website having an interesting UI always appreciated by the user. Yes, you are right. But let's say if that takes we also have Sriram. Hey, Sriram. Great. So now, if the website also, if we just have a UI, but let's say the website does not function properly or takes 1 minute to load, call me Tuhin. Okay, hi Chigil. That's a very interesting name, though. Okay, good. Hey Chigil. Okay. Okay. So demonstrate, right? If you, let's say you have some sort of a website which takes 30 minutes to load, and the website is exceptionally beautiful, but who's gonna wait 30 minutes for that? So that would create some sort of a mess around the situation over there. So yeah, it's about the entire package. It's not about having the beauty of something, but also you need to have that charisma, and you have to have that particularly personality in your website so that it retains, right? I can talk to I can talk to someone in this particular place. Oh, we also acknowledge, hey, thanks though. Okay, so we can actually have somewhat like this, right? We can create something, and then let's say it sticks over to as a user's memory. Then your users are more likely to come and stay and then go away and retain, come back over and over and over again. So that's the point, right? So one classic example on this note, just remember, all of you, is like, once again, you most folks must have heard of like Oberoi, JW Marriott, and all these hotels, right? The reason it remains to, okay, hello Tanuja, and hey Aparna, hey Sneh, hey people, by the way. Okay, so now the thing is like, so what I was saying, okay, so now the JW Marriott, Oberoi, Hyatt, all these things, they remains in our head as a very classic or premium stuff, is not because they look very premium, they offer premium, they are premium, they give you that luxury. The same thing has to go about the particular field over here, right? Your entire website should be the same way. Let's move forward. All right, sometimes it's all about advertising the product and force us to use it. Absolutely, Swastik. That's a absolutely point. You are phenomenally correct, Swastik, in this particular point, right? Which is, uh, it's also about changing the product behavior. And I would go like, Swastik, if you just stay around for a little longer. Once again, if you stay around a little longer, just call this thing out. At any point of time, we are about to talk about the limitations part and the features part of it. I would really like to point this thing out and what causes this issue. And there are some obvious helps and some common user use cases where it may help, may not help. It depends. Alrighty. Coming back to the last part. So now, as of now, what do we had? We would you show us a live demo? I probably can. I probably can if the time permits. And yeah, but it depends on the time, buddy. Can't really comment much. Alrighty. So as of now, we had a web app manifest. We made our we made our application installable, and now we are now aiming towards providing offline capabilities to the particular journey, right? Which is the main part. Now, what can offline pro features mean? So it's like you think about it like this. Don't putting a random thing by saying that hey, you are offline may be okay, but once again, the goal is let's try to be helpful even when we are offline. Let's say, for example, let's say you are building let's say make my trip clone, or somewhat like a better make my trip or a better version of entire thing. So boarding pass or a ticket that is accessible offline helps. That's one. Similarly, let's say you make a e-commerce. So similarly, right, you add something to your cart, and let's say you don't have internet, that's fine, but you just should be able to just go and just look at the cart. So that's a very interesting point. Let's say you create WhatsApp clone, or maybe at the next best awesome social media over there, and over there you just want to see the context and the existing chats, or you just want to have some emergency contacts or somewhat like that, right? Yeah, so nobody's offering offline services, even in e-commerce. That's a very point. Yeah, meanwhile, I will just quickly take a pause and just look at the chat. Okay, so we folks say, would you, okay, Swagat, okay. Alrighty. Meditation, music, CSC, course, say, con. Oh, okay, that's a very interesting one. Not for me. All right, people, feel free to answer. Devan says the user just needs to get this work done, move on, complete the package. Is appreciated by the program. Precisely. So we can always talk about the user behavior. Rishabh says we can have more sessions. Yeah, feel free to go. I'm more than happy to connect over LinkedIn and talk more about it. Ram Kumar say if you want the app for free, there will be ads. That's the monetization strategy of it. We can talk about it. Offline capital capabilities do help in customer acquisition in some way, getting the appreciation. Read it. Yes, absolutely. You are right. So it's a very interesting point. Offline capabilities only make sense if they give you an unified experience. Once again, the main part of building this progressive web apps and all those things is to create a unified package. If your entire product itself is not providing a unified experience, it's never going to work. Imagine you open a coffee shop. Your coffee shop says we make great coffee here, and that's in blue, hypothetically. You went inside the store and you suddenly see red. We make great coffee here. You move a little bit further, you see even more colors. And suddenly you see a very like a street food kind of a store at the end of a polished building. Is this a great experience to you? Not really. It feels very disconnected. It's like, hey, I was expecting some bluish theme maybe. I was expecting some sense of feelings and all those things, because we as a humans have a lot of implicit biasness. We're super biased about a lot of features. The moment we look at something, it takes a very fraction of a second just to call out, hey, I like it, I don't like it, right? If you like it, you retain. You don't like it, you feel something off and you just go away. So all of the features, right? So similarly, right? Thanks for calling out Vallavi, Shivli, and everyone. Uh, that at the end of the day, right? All of these features needs to be there, and it should not feel out of the place. It needs to be there for a purpose, for a reason, for a value proposition, right? Great. Moving a little bit forward, we are already halfway through, but once again, like, how do you really do it? Like, okay, I have talked about that. Hey, you can do this, you can do that, and we have some specialized steps, but how can we really achieve this thing? Now, of course, like as people have already called this thing out, but yeah, if still people need to take a for a second, I forgot what was it. Arya who was talking about REST APIs. Maybe I lost it. Yeah, I'm pretty bad with names, but once again, yeah, if you just look at this particular image or this particular screen itself, just notice, look at this thing. You have a HTML, you have service worker, you have your cloud, Wi-Fi, internet, whatever it is. You have your storage, and then you have this particular service worker, which is essentially the fetch handler. It sits something in between. The question is, do you notice the magic element here? If you did not, I'm pretty sure all of you did. It's service worker. And people, you folks are super smart. You just called it out. Now I would show you some bunch of diagram to ensure that you find it very exciting and yeah. But once again, I'm not really a fan of it. But I just put it for the sake of this PPT. But I would quickly take a talk about it in a much more simpler terms. Imagine this thing. So let's say we are at a home and we want some a glass of water, and our mummies are always and let's say our mummies are always helpful to us, right? We can say, hey mummy, or hey daddy, or hey papa, can you pass me a glass of water? And they usually do it, right? Now they can do a lot of ways they want to. They can either bring it from the glass for the bottle that they are holding. They can actually go to the filter and fill it up and then give me the data. They can even say, hey, I do not have it, I am busy, can you just go, hey beta, hey beti, can you just go there and just grab it yourself, I'm busy now. Maybe he's just not there, so on and so forth. A lot of things can happen. It is very complicated to say, right? The similar thing happens with service worker. You have your UI, you have your backend. Instead of UI directly communicating with the backend, what do? You take a pause, you put somebody in the middle to do the heavy lifting. All right. That heavy lifting can be done in a lot of ways. It can, so Arya, it can actually call the REST APIs at the backend. It can also interpret like the request itself and respond it's directly without talking to the backend. It can also take the response of a backend and cache it and then send it later. Let's take one example. So let's say you open up LinkedIn. Let's hypothetically say you open up LinkedIn. All right. Now, once you open up LinkedIn in this particular case, a lot of things can happen, right? You have to show some set of, like, let's say some set of posts that you want to show. What if your backend takes a little bit amount of time to curate the customized post to you and then send it there, right? Navigator is a very interesting point. We can talk about that thing. Yeah, I'm really glad, Devansh. I'm happy to see that people over here are like responding with this very interesting point. Navigator is a very cool thing. I can talk about it after 2 minutes. So let's continue this flow first. So now, let's say LinkedIn takes few amount or Twitter takes a few amount of time to generate the feed that it really needs to show the user. All right. You will open Twitter page and you would just have to wait for a certain amount of time. Is that a great user experience? Your website load in a fraction of a second. It's an website at this point of time, and it's becoming it's installable. It's on your home screen. You tap on it, it opened up, and now you're waiting for the data to load. Is the great experience? Might not be. On a faster network, it really does not matter. And but on a different place, like let's say on a different place, like on a in this particular example, right, it might not be a very good experience, because let's say if a person is at a rural place, the person has 2G, buddy. The person does not even have 3G. He uses Nokia 600 maybe. So I don't know what model was that. And then it does not can access it, then it is a very bad experience. That's where service worker comes. What service worker can do, service worker says, hey, all right, let the back end take the time to give me the data. Meanwhile, front end, there you go. Take my cache data. Hey, this is the response. I had it sometime back. I synchronized with the backend sometime in the background, and then just show it. So I'm pretty sure all of you, at least at one point of time, I hope have used Android phones, right? And Android phones, you just swipe left on the home screen. It goes to the Google feed where you see a lot of bunch of newses. Think about it. Do you ever actively have to refresh the feed to get the new things, or at any point in time you just go, you see oftentimes, right, you see is very different content even though you are not actively reloading it. And if it is, even if you're offline, it is still showing the previous results, it's still there. So that's the beauty of service worker. It ensures that it takes the new data from the back end at the background without disturbing you, while you as a user gets a very seamless experience. You continue to work, you continue to stay on the website, you don't go anywhere else, you just stay. Ready? Cool. Now, that's the beauty we can achieve with this thing. There are a lot of ways. Of course, this is another gigantic PPT slide. I just don't look at it at all, pretend that it is not there. It is just there for the sake of this PPT to look a lot more professional and technical. But I can always make you like I always tell you like a digested part of it. The idea is you have to do a caching a little bit over there already. Now the question is that, hey Tuhin, if I have to cache, what do I cache? Do I cache everything? Do I cache the entire database? Do I cache every single field? Do I cache all its mutual friends? I can cache everything. I have 1 terabyte of storage. My user only have 64 gigabytes. How do I even store the data over there? And how do I ensure that it still remains valuable? So it's a very interesting point over there. So the rule of the thumb is you have to cache the most critical things that are absolutely required in order the website or the application to perform. It can be your main HTML page. Like for example, let's say if the linkedin.com or google.com itself does not open, you cannot do anything. So maybe you can just load a very blank page, not a blank page, but with some scaffolding by the banner and say some sort of loader, some sort of skeleton, so that the moment you launch the application, instead of showing some sort of loader or something, you have something to work on. You have something to play around. You have a good website over there. You have a good experience. People would be, because once again, right, people would then forget that it's a website and not an application. Because we are used to, if you ever use LinkedIn website or LinkedIn mobile application itself, you just open, you can even open YouTube on your phone and you see, right, you click on YouTube. Sometimes it just loads the data, sometimes it just loads the UI, and the data is still like the skeleton loaders are there, and then that new data pops up. You know something is coming. It's a balance of both, right? Let's say your basic style sheets, yeah, it's similar to load basic version of the Gmail. Precisely, it can be. You can think of it absolutely like that if you really want to. Okay, great. Now, moving a slightly shifting gears, you also need a little bit of CSS style. Then there are basic images, right? Sometimes we love to create fancy banner images that are just there on the top, and some carousels, some scrollable things. But once again, those images, let's say, even they have 200 kilobytes, and then there are 10 images. You already have 2 megabytes of data that is now being transferred. Once again, you have to remember, web is open, web is linkable, web is accessible to everyone. On 4G, it works. 3G may work. On 2G, oh my god, it will work the next day. I will go and take my shower and come back, and then my image still see, okay, it's still loading. That's a very bad experience, right? So similar to that thing, you can cache or preload your images, store it in a local cache, because you know those images are don't likely to change often. So you store it. You create a very interesting experience now. And you're suddenly, right, the moment you do that, you can quickly imagine your entire website suddenly becomes faster. Suddenly it works very smooth. It just works. People are not able to identify that whether it's a web application, whether it's a thing. Yeah, the site sometimes the Tanush, whatever. Hey, Tanush. Okay, sometimes the site load without this. Yes, absolutely. This is the precise problem, right? Because Tanush, the CSS would take certain amount of time to download. You need to download the resource. That's the point of it. You're saving time. You're just putting the critical CSS or the main part that you really need, just give it there. It's on the service worker. Let's say hypothetically, I don't really recommend using, let's say at this point of time, Bootstrap or somewhat like a framework. But once again, if someone is still you want to use it, go ahead. And once again, every page require Bootstrap. Every page would require Material UI. Every page would require Tailwind. Why bother putting it as an optional dependency? Cache it in your service worker. It loads instantaneous. It saves you a lot of time. Now you don't need to download it again and again and again. Similarly, the fonts on the page, if there are, let's say, multiple pages, let's say you know that you have built a portfolio website now, and you know that if somebody comes to your screen, the user is likely to go towards contact us or contact me. Preload that page, have it in your cache. People click on contact, you want to be like, hey, you want to contact me right now, I want your contacts. Somewhat like that. Why bother showing the delay? So that's the point of caching. Is it all good, people? All the same page till now? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Awesome. Great. Okay. Now towards the end of this flow. Now that we talked about, what do we talk, let's do a quick recap. PWAs are fast, installable, and efficient. It's easy, right? You have the existing website, you just put a manifest, you make it installable, you put it on a secure context, we'll talk about it, and you have some really meaningful offline experience. And now you instantly have some sort of a magical application, the website that is now installable, and everything like a works like a charm. But once again, life is not all about roses and all those things. There are trick caveats, and then there are some hidden secrets. So this is my take on it, on like sharing with you some bits of it. But once again, do remember whatever I tell you, take it with a grain of salt, because once again, the world is changing at a very fast rate. This may quickly become invalid. The world may change, new things might come up, and once again, these are only a subset of what you can do to improve it, what you need to have your design philosophies, the way you can proceed, so on and so forth. And these are subject to change, and these are not limited to what I just tell you. All that? Great. Cool. Let's move now. Okay. So there are a couple of things. So this is the first thing, right? The first thing is like you have to make sure that a core part of it works okay. So it's a mindset first that can later be translated towards some sort of a like a working model, some sort of code and all those things. But this design philosophy needs to say, you need to remember that hey, this website or this web app or this progressive web app, however you call it, or this need like somewhat like a hybrid app, it needs to start fast and it needs to stay fast. You cannot say that hey, my website loads in a fraction of a second, but my first home, in order to go to this community page or some other page, it takes 2 minutes. Nah, that doesn't work. That's a no. That's absolutely no. No, you cannot do that. So it needs to start fast. It needs to stay fast. Lazy load everything that you don't require. Only load stuff when you need it. When on show images in a like render images like a little less aggressively. If something is out of your screen, don't render it at all. Keep the device as light as you probably can. The next thing is you need to remember, you cannot say that hey, majority of the people works at Chrome, and you are trying on Firefox. My website does not work on Firefox. That's not a thing. I mean, if you say that my website does not work on Internet Explorer, even though I should not say it, I might still get convinced. Like, ठीक है भाई, छोड़ दो Internet Explorer को, वो that is dead. But don't do it for Mozilla or somewhat like that. ठीक है? But yeah, once again, this is more of hilarious. If you can accommodate something for even older thing, you are an awesome developer, awesome person at the end of the day who cares about even for the fraction of our user, right? But once again, once you grow your startup, once you grow your product, once you build it out to somebody, even the fraction of a percent can actually be a huge number. And when I say huge, it is really huge number. Like once again, 1% of 100 people might be one people. But once again, 1% of a billion people is 10 billion people. Please. So that's a interesting, like seriously huge number. Great. Coming back. Now you also need to make sure that it is responsive. Like it does not matter what device I open. I open a mobile, I open a desktop, I open it on a tablet, I open a smaller mobile, smaller device. It needs to cater for everything. Now you might say, hey, why do I do that? And is that really necessary? The answer is, buddy, you go to Play Store, you have an application, it works on any phone, right? So that's a once again, it's a desired behavior expectation from user. So we as a developers, we as a owner of the product, owner of the business, owner of this mindset should sell what the customer really needs. It's more about being customer obsessed. You're obsessed about it. You are obsessed about them. And once again, like I already mentioned over here, right? He provides a it needs to provide a custom offline page if that makes sense. Then once again, there is this is installable, so on and so forth. All right, cool. Great. Any questions so far? That's a core part of it. But once again, that's not all. And then there are even more. You can also think of like this thing that, hey, that's a core part of it. But an optimal progressive application may have even more. It is fully accessible. It has a good search engine optimization. So it is discovered to search. And that's one of the very interesting thing of an progressive web application, right? You mean if you just Google out something, if it's a native application, it does not come on Google search or somewhere else. But it's an at the end of the day, buddy, a progressive web application is at the end of the day is just a website. It's just a website. So it is equally searchable, indexable, and like discoverable. So you can actually do that. So all of this thing goes in there, and you don't have to do marketing even. You can just run an ad, you can just go it there, you can just get this thing, right? One, why it's a very diverse set of things. It can work with any input type. For example, it can work with a mouse, it can work with a keyboard, it can even should be able to work with a pen and a tablet, if it really wants to be. It's a very diverse set of access. It a progressive web application can run on website, can run on Windows and Mac, Linux. It can even run on a TV. You don't know where you are running it. So it has to be runnable at any places. And this is the main thing. Like, you need to validate with the user that it really solves the issue that you really plan to. You can plan the technical and the UX interpretation, and you can monitor KPIs, which stand for key performance indexes, or somebody call it key performance metrics, up to you, to ensure that you're building the right thing for your customers. All set? Cool. Moving forward, and the progressive enhancement. Yeah, so this is the fun part of it. So people might think that, hey, the web is limited, it cannot do anything, there are limitations of it. But once again, when I was at my final years or somewhat like that, and this COVID kind of thing came up, I remember like the Aragya Setu and all those things. We ended up this was pre Aragya Setu phase. We were also working on somewhat like that, and we ended up building some sort of a website which would do the same exact real time tracking. It would tell you all the geolocation matching, so on and so forth. It can access device notification, give you a secure authentication, so on and so forth, and it can also have the contact picker, so every single thing all on web, and people does not realize it. This was a very fun fact, and this is a very interesting. The web can use NFCs, and NFCs are used for payments. So web can do even contactless payment. You can do augmentation reality. You can do virtual reality. You can put a lock over there. You can send notifications. You can put media capture. You can. It even has a speech synthesis API. So you don't even need to convert your text to speeches. It also have a voice recognition API. It can handle voice commands. You can do every single thing that you really want to do with it. All right. So it's super feature packed. Head over to MDN Docs and you would see a lot of device capabilities. It can also access your accelerometer, gyroscope, and whatnot, even your ambient light sensor, if you really want to give that amount of flexibility. Right? Cool. Okay, quick recap. So, what have we talk about it till now? PWAs are something that is progressive, linkable, fast, it's discoverable. It has to be fast. It have a smoother user experience. Has to have some caching. It can incorporate offline experiences. It has to be engageable, a feeling. It can achieve the same thing with the secure context like HTTPS. Should have a web manifest. Should be installable, and should have at least one service worker which can interpret the responses, should be able to send you push notifications, so on and so forth. All right. Awesome, folks. Awesome. Now, and like another super kind of a techie stuff, but yeah, this essentially tells the same exact thing. If you want to read it, take a screenshot of it. Yeah, read it at your convenience. But once again, it tells you the same precise thing, that once you launch it, there are advantages to it. There are some design changes that you have to do, and you become a little bit more obsessed with the customer, because now you're not only developing a software, you're not only advertising the software, but you are really creating a unique experience that all of your customers would remember and would come back for the same experience. And it is indistinguishable. It itself is a big achievement. When you have a website, you yourself feel a good pride that, hey, I can get the same shitty thing done without paying a single penny to any of the big tech giants like Google or Apple. Put them on your Play Store. It is discoverable. It is accessible. I'm making all of the money. I'm not paying a single penny out of my pocket. It is discoverable at the same time, so people can go there. It is shareable. Even if you don't want to install it out, you don't need to. You just share the link, and it is on website. It is accessible at every single platform. I don't care what device you run. Is it older hardware? Is it newer hardware? Does it have that? Does not have some X features? It just works. It's super distributable. And once again, you can actually even package it into a lot of interesting places. Like, you can make it a native application. It can also convert it itself into a, let's say, some sort of electron like Discord, right? Once again, imagine once Discord built that same piece of thing, or this is a very classic example for Slack. Slack has the identical features at web, identical features at mobile, identical features at their desktop application. Precise reason, they're only just a website at the end of the day. Oh, and I also mentioned you can do video chat like we are already doing, right? So even though you might be watching from a phone, I am talking to you over this video stream through a laptop. So I am using an like essentially a desktop system. It does not have an app, and I can still do that through just a website itself. Alrighty, cool. So it has a lot. How do you get started? Finally, how do you get started? And I promise it should not take more than 3 minutes or to 4 minutes anymore. And I am more than happy to give you back your time. So how do you get started around this entire thing? Once again, the first thing is to build a great website. How do you do that? HTML, CSS, JavaScript. How do you get started with it? The answer is it's that simple, buddy. HTML is nothing but it has some tags, it has some attributes. You put them, you're done. Your skeleton is ready. You need some CSS, all right. Head over to CSS Zen Garden, head over to Tutorials Point, head over to W3 Schools. There are awesome resources. You want to go to YouTube and search for people. There are Kevin, then there is Web Dev Simplified. There are a ton of resources available over you. You can just go on. Yeah, absolutely. Free code camp. Yeah, I forgot it. Thanks for calling it out, man. Yeah. So there, and of course, there are torrents. You can download. You can get everything for free. I should not say this, but once again, this is like very unofficially speaking to you, more as like a friend and less like a some sort of like a colleague or someone like that. Great. So you can actually get the knowledge that you really need to do in order to do that thing very easily. But once again, for folks who does not have any idea of CSS, it's nothing but a property name or some sort of attribute, and then you open a curly brace, you put a property name and a property value. Example, h1 can have font size, so you can have a font size of 10 pixel, 20 pixels, somewhat like that. Anybody who is familiar with word docs or somewhat like that, this should be like very straightforward. It's doing the same exact thing by writing code. It's might not be the most optimal way of doing it, but that's the way it is, and I should advocate towards it. So it's CSS, and you should continue doing it. Alrighty, and now the last piece on this entire piece of this puzzle is, of course, the JavaScript. JavaScript is like your life, where you're in your life. You have some people who are constants. You have some people who are variables who just keep changing. You will only find them when they need something from you. Otherwise, you don't find them. Every morning you wake up, you do the brushing, you do some functions, and every day you decide whether you want to do a mass bunk or do you want to go to the college or do you want to work. So that's like a branching. And sometime if the assignments come up, then you have to go on a loop and then you continue doing it, which probably means JavaScript has constants, variables, functions, some sort of looping and the branching. So that's a bare bone you need. Of course, it has way more than that. And I'm not offending to anyone. I'm pretty much oversimplifying for you just to ensuring that you find it a very good entry point to it. All right, so it's that simple. All right, cool. There are other tools if you are not a backend guy and want to save some time of this thing. You can just go to Firebase basically. So Firebase, if you haven't heard of it, I'm pretty sure you have. If you haven't, it would handle the backend part of it for you ever so simply. If you don't want to go on to writing some function or some REST API, which is something that I absolutely recommend you to do, you should actually go ahead and try building your own backend, own front end before going there, because once again, you would have a very good like ground and a base of it, right? If your ground and the base that you're talking forward, if your base is solid, you actually can do a lot of abstraction. Firebase, AWS Amplify, Cognito, all those things are nothing but just a wrapper over it. You can have your databases, all those things set up, you can have real-time connections, but once again, these are just features that can extend your existing architecture that you're already building over there. Similarly, if you're not a Google fan, an AWS fan, feel free to go ahead and able to use AWS Amplify, which is essentially the same. Now, of course, you might ask, "Hey, Tuhin, you gave us some sort of an intro. I'm not sure if it's a good intro or bad. You people can call it out. But once again, now that you have some sort of intro, you know what the value it begins and the basics. How do you get started and where do you start? The question is, what's next? What do you do about it now? Now I know all this thing. Should I just die? Should I dance? Should I? What do I do? The answer is you can just get started with this thing and feel free to open web.dev. maybe try checking out MDN docs, which have a more comprehensive doc around it. I don't want to be some sort of a like a like a documentation reader. So I'm pretty sure if you folks are super interested in this case, you can go and just go over there. I'm not sure, Rishabh, how can I share it across, but once again, you can talk to the relevant folks and they would be help you able to help you there. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, talk to me on LinkedIn. I can help you there. Great. And of course, one last thing is most importantly, there is a cool tool that I just wanted to mention as a bonus. It's a bubble wrap. There is also a modified version of bubble wrap, which is called as PWA Builder. You open PWA Builder on your website. Okay. What would happen is a PWA Builder can do all of this heavy lifting part for you and gives you a very basic scaffolded application which can be instantly, literally instantly. You give PW Builder a URL and it instantly gives you its equivalent Android package, Microsoft Store package, Samsung Tizen package, Fire, probably Amazon's Firebase package. So it's like you build a website and now you just package it into mobile applications, which you, if you really want to put it on Play Store, you can put it on Play Store. So you don't have to do any additional heavy lifting. All right. So it's a different take on it. Great. Just before I close, a few more things. Yeah. Limitations. All right. That's the last part of it. Folks, you have any questions before I move on to limitations? I need some water basically. So yeah, feel free to ask if you have any questions. Is bubble wrap open source? Yes. Yeah. It is. Bubble Wrap is a dev preview software. It was like a command line tool that can package it. Modern version of it is known as PWA Builder. You can search for it. Great. Limitations. Now, one final thing is like life cannot be all roses always, right? PWA builders can also be used to get some more idea. So PWA Builder is a website. So PWA Builder is essentially a website, and what it does is basically take, if you open I can just Google it out, but give me a minute. I can open up the, I can tell you the precise, so it's pwabuilder.com. You can go there, you can like you open it. I'm not sure how can I share my screen, I wish I could. You just open it, it just takes an URL, and then you can instantly package it directly for Microsoft kind of iOS. You can create an Android package. You can even like make your website available on MetaQuest. It directly converts it over there, right? The same, pretty much the same idea that works for Discord and all those things. Like it's like presenting it out, but there are limitations. Once again, even take my limitations with a grain of salt. World is changing, web is evolving. Whatever is limitations 2 years back is not a limitation today anymore. One similarly, whatever is today's limitations might not be tomorrow's limitations. All right, because web has come a long way. One of the main limitation that was previously limiting is once again the iOS part of it. Even though it works absolutely phenomenally on Android and all the other ecosystems, PWS generally used to have a lower adoption rate and a lower support rate on iOS devices. Why? Because once again, it's Apple being Apple. I want Safari. Precisely, that should answer the question. But yeah, there are limitations to it. But once again, now that the world is moving forward very fast, and Chrome is already like having a lot more user base, even though and that's the reason even Safari and Apple is bound to go up to this thing. And I if I just being honest with you, like a fun fact, today I opened, like a few days back, when I opened PW Builder, like the website I was talking about, I did not saw that Apple icon. And today while talking to you, the moment I opened that, I saw that Apple icon, and now okay, now it has Apple iOS support. Great. That's not even a limitation anymore. So precisely this is what I was trying to say. Previously, Apple does not used to have some sort of a, how would I say it, like web notification, like some notification that Swiggy, Zomato kind of sent, right? It you previously it usually did not had one, but once again the situation is improving. Right now we do have. Right now we do. Previously it does not also used to have background saying somewhat like that, but once again things are changing. You have most of the features available, but if you really want to build for iOS, I still suggest at the time of you are building this thing, go to MDN docs or maybe go to caniuse.com and just search for the feature that you want to build. See whether it is supported on iOS. If it does, you're all good. And in general, most things are supported. So, okay, so that's all I pretty much had. I saved around a little bit of our time, to be honest. I'm open for questions, open for feedbacks, open for thoughts. If you want to talk about it, anything.
Um, so first of all, thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful session. My unmute. Uh,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
really appreciate it. People, if
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you
I
so
can
much
hear
for
you.
the time. We had a great interaction in the audience as well. So I think we can begin with the Q&A session now. So if there are any questions from the audience, they can post it in the chat box. So you can ask sir anything about anything, like if
Yeah,
you have any doubts or anything.
I am all yours at this point. You can ask me, and you can just throw me any questions, and if it is non-censorable, I would probably answer.
So I don't think there are any more questions.
Yeah, plus
So
one to that.
So we'll be concluding with the session. So, sir, my personal opinion on the session as a college student and a web developer who has worked with React and Next.js, right? It was a great
Hmm.
learning experience, and I think I'll definitely be using PW in my next project too.
Yeah, that's a great thing to hear, though. Yeah, cool.
Thank you so
Alrighty.
much. Thank you so much, sir, for your knowledge. This was a really good learning experience, and really wish to connect with you and have more sessions with you.
Yeah, sure. Alrighty. Alrighty. Thank you,
Thank you
folks.
so much.
Thanks for having me over there. Stay awesome. Cool.
Thank you. We'll be ending the live now.